Well, Catholic Divas, we are going to be continuing our conversation with Cindy and Jeremy Rohr. So come on into the podcast and hear how you can have freedom to love. Hey, this is Mama Jane.
And this is Mama Vicky. Welcome to the Cycles and Sanctity podcast.
I'm a Billings ovulation method instructor and a certified Catholic mindset coach.
And I'm a labor and delivery nurse, an IBCLC, and a La Leche League leader.
We're here to share with you the beauty and the pain of your cycles.
Have you considered honoring your cycle throughout the journey of your womanhood?
Have you ever considered your cycle as a tool toward your holiness?
Well, sisters, it is. We're excited to walk this journey with you.
So go grab your favorite journal and pen and your hot beverage, and let's do this.
So you guys had said at the beginning when you introduced yourselves that you've done this marriage retreat, engagement retreat, and NFP included. You've been doing it for 17 years. Tell me a little bit, and especially for Jeremy, because I really want to focus on, first of all, your own coaching program, because I just think you are another John the Baptist, the truth in the wilderness. And I just want to tell every man to go to you because you just have such a great program. Tell me the resistance that you have encountered with men with NFP, because this is what I hear on my side of the spectrum of women dealing with, oh, my husband's not in union with me, and all the drama, right?
Yeah. So I started a ministry a few years ago called Freedom to Love, and I focus on helping people overcome pornography habits and in particular, trying to help those who mentor or guide other people, dads in particular, in that I grew up before the internet as well. And so pornography was a different challenge at that time. There was an assumption, I think, that most guys, by the time they got into their mid-20s, got married, the hormones would die off a little bit. They would physically be a little bit more mature in terms of being able to manage their will. And then once you got married, you kind of figured out, oh, this is what sex is for. And so it wasn't as big of a challenge. And what I found is that the internet really changed that, in that the internet made it so that once we discover internet pornography and we engage in that, it becomes such a powerful emotional regulation tool that whenever I feel bad, now I can just go look at pornography, I can masturbate, I can whatever. And I've conditioned my body so that I associate sex, pornography, masturbation, whatever the case is, I associate that with pleasure to such a degree that everything else is kind of by the wayside. And what I found for myself, and what I try to help engage couples, especially the guys, understand on the retreat, is that that's inconsistent with the freedom to be able to be a gift without expectation to my wife. And I learned that pornography took away my freedom to love Cindy authentically. And it caused us a lot of pain in our marriage because I had to learn that in the marriage. So Cindy was diagnosed with cancer, and it was, as she said, it was fed by hormones. And so the doctors had to get the hormones out of her body to prevent the cancer from continuing to grow. And one of the steps at one point was it made sense for her to have a full hysterectomy. And at that point, then now the hormones are no longer in her body that naturally make her want to be sexually intimate with me. So we're 5, 6, 7 years into our marriage. And all of a sudden that's gone. That desire, that natural desire that she very quickly can kind of come online with me. And now we're both in the mood and all that was there.
And that you're open to life during that time.
Yeah.
Because that's a challenge with other people, right? Like, hey, I'm going to get kind of graphic here, but like, I'm only horny during this time and we can't have sex. And that's the resentment.
Yeah. Well, so part of what I learned is that I was bitter at Cindy because we weren't experiencing that. And that began a process for me, and God really working through that. She said, why Jeremy, you need to learn here. You need to understand what's going on here. And all of a sudden, I realized that I conditioned my expectation that love meant sex.
Mm.
Instead of love, I think it's St. Thomas that defines love as willing the good of the other for the other person's sake.
Repeat that for our listeners because this is so profound. And I think most people don't get this. Like, if we just learn one thing today, say it again. You
Yeah.
equated.
Love is willing the good of the other for the other person's sake. And pornography took away my freedom to be able to love Cindy fully and authentically. So that was the journey. And eventually I learned the connection between the internet and how dopamine hijacks that. And it becomes something that we depend on for emotional regulation. And so now that's why I focus on helping the dads understand that. My goal is I think every guy that's gone through it also benefits themselves, every dad, because again, it's kind of like learning NFP. You learn a little bit
Something
about,
makes sense.
yeah, you learn a little bit about yourself, why it's difficult at times. And the goal is for us to learn to love each other, to be authentic, to be a free, total, faithful, fruitful gift. And if I have an expectation on Cindy, I'm not allowing her to be a free gift. She's being an obligatory gift. And it's like, that's not love either. And if
Mhm.
I get upset at her because, and in my humanness, there's a little bit of that, but the goal is that my heart is less oriented towards that,
Mhm.
that I can say, okay, you know what? Yeah, that's okay. And it was actually a very purifying process, as difficult as it was, because I'm, the old saying, guys are like microwaves, women are like crock pots. I mean, I could get aroused and interested very easily. And I learned a process from Christopher West that helped me immensely. And it's called saying honest prayers. And I did a series in my podcast on it. And I have a little guide. You can go to my website, freedomtolove.org, and download it. And it's a process of acknowledging what you're experiencing, then acknowledging the gift, choosing to accept the sacrifice, and then saying a prayer for the person, in this case, Cindy. And it's just, Lord, I know that the desire to be intimate with my wife is good. And I thank you for the gift that it's been, that it's allowed us to come closer together, that it's allowed us to have two daughters. I pray for us that, Lord, help us to continue to grow in love for each other. I accept the fact that we're not going to experience that now, and I willingly do that. And I just offer that up for the sake of my family, that we can grow in purity and holiness. And that's not always an easy prayer,
Mhm.
but it allowed me to embrace the struggle and reorient it towards something positive.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
yeah, it's been tough. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It's not that it's like, oh, yeah, this is a piece of cake and there's something wrong with you if you don't find this easy. That's not the case at all. But yet, in that element of sacrificing, of laying my life down, there's a growth in holiness. And a couple of my favorite speakers say that marriage is the great saint maker,
Mhm.
because it makes you lay down yourself for the other person. And it makes you look at those areas in life that you are selfish, and that selfishness hurts the other person. And you have to choose then, what am I going to do? Am I going to let God into that? Am I going to
Mhm.
let God transform me
Mhm.
and work with that? And we don't do it perfectly, but God is faithful and God has really helped us. And I can speak for myself. For me, He's really helped me with all of that.
That's so beautiful. Cindy, I want to ask you, knowing that because of the breast cancer, you had a hysterectomy and therefore you didn't have the hormones. I also have a program for midlife women who are going perimenopause or even postmenopause. And that libido is literally gone because your estrogen's not rising, you're not ovulating. How did you deal with the prospect of coming into the marriage bed and offering yourself to Jeremy without that hormonal kick, if you will? My husband likes to say the friskiness, like he always knew I was ovulating because I was
Right.
frisky, right? And then all of a sudden you're not frisky. And here's the reason why I ask that is many women who are still ovulating will tell me, I always use the phrase the honeymoon phase of the luteal phase. Like you've ovulated, your egg is disintegrated. Now it's time to celebrate as much as possible. Now the feast is on. And I tell people, like, go have as much sex as you can. Please, this is the time. But I hear the opposite of the girls, like, oh, I'm tired. I don't want to go. I don't want to. And I'm like, dude, come on. Your husband's been waiting for you. And I've struggled with it, especially post-menopause, because while I was ovulating, yeah, and we were always open to children. So it was that time to come together. We were a little more frisky, right? Our pheromones were up, and that's the time to come together. So I had my own mind drama and stuff, but I want to hear how did you handle that? Because you handled it at such an earlier age in your marriage. You had two children.
Yeah, I got pushed into menopause with my first chemo treatment at the age of 36.
Mm,
And then after my chemo finished, my hormone levels started to come up, and then they threw something else at me to just suppress them altogether. They just said, because your cancer is fed by estrogen, like you can't
yeah.
let that happen. And so it was hard because Jeremy was in one place with an expectation, not understanding me, but I kind of refer to it as just being completely edited. And this person of me that I knew, like, was suddenly different. And I couldn't even, it was like I didn't know me anymore and really had kind of lost a sense of me. And it was really strange because when I was prepping to go, nobody talked to me about the lack of hormones and what would happen. We just scheduled it, and it was a pretty,
It's gonna be fine, right? Fine.
well, I think I don't know, maybe they just thought I knew everything. And on the one hand, it's like, yeah, I guess maybe I could have looked into that a little bit more, but our kids were little. I mean, my kids were 2 and 3 when we were going through this. At the same time, we had other stuff that was going on financially. Jeremy had gone into a deep depression. I mean, we were in the throes of a lot of crazy things going on. And so suddenly here I am, this person. Of course, I looked normal in who I was and familiar on the outside. And then everything on the inside had been changed and edited, and some of it was missing. And I had had a double mastectomy and now this hysterectomy and all those changes that I never was counseled through. And so between me not knowing myself or feeling like I didn't and having to reconnect with myself, and then Jeremy's got these expectations, and I knew he was mad, but I had no desire. And then when he's mad, how do you want to be intimate with somebody? You know what I mean? Like it really,
Yeah.
it was just broken for a while.
Please finish that
Not gonna
statement because
lie.
I hear that all the time. My husband's mad because we're not having sex, but I don't want to have sex because he's mad. Like it's this
Yeah.
vicious cycle, right? We use
Yeah.
sex as an object, as a trophy. Who's got the power? It's a power play.
Well, and I think he completely underestimated the pain and the hurt that I was going through because of it too, because
Mhm,
there was a gulf that had kind of developed that emotionally, because of the depression he was battling, like he just wasn't there for me
mhm,
emotionally.
mhm.
And of course, that built resentment up in me. How can
Mhm.
you not be like, I'm like facing my death here, like not to
Yeah,
sound so overly dramatic, but I mean,
but it was true. I mean,
but it was true
know,
because I'm telling you that cancer is an ugly cancer. I mean, as is any cancer, but the seriousness of it and what I was knowing and seeing about it, and it was just not looking fantastic, I'll
right,
say.
right.
So we were struggling through so much of our own not understanding, our own disappointments, our own hurts, our own struggle and frustration, but didn't know how to come together to kind of help understand what the other one was going through. Like I couldn't take his on because I was just
Mhm,
struggling with my own. I
mhm,
couldn't even step into what he was battling.
mhm.
I think that what has helped us, honestly, those engaged couple retreats that we put on, it is a very stiff gut check to us, even still, all these years later. How am I loving? How am I loving my husband? It's
Mhm.
with every retreat, we do them 4 times a year. And so it's a challenge even still to this day after all these years.
Mhm.
Here we are speaking to these people about what we've learned about marriage. And am I speaking it in honesty?
Yeah.
Am I being honest about loving my husband, or am I just
Mhm.
putting on a face of, it
Mhm.
looks good? That has actually been very therapeutic actually for us because we continued to be challenged in that as well.
Right. Right. I want to remind our listeners, we've all
Mm,
been certified as Catholic mindset coaches, and we all know and on the podcast that our circumstances are neutral. So it doesn't matter whether it's I got breast cancer and I had to have a hysterectomy and I don't have any estrogen, or the circumstance could be I keep miscarrying and I can't have a baby and I'm in a funk and my husband's in a funk and he's blaming me, or I'm perimenopause and my body's so out of whack and I don't feel like myself and I feel ugly because my body's changing and my husband doesn't want to have sex with me because we're so afraid that we're going to have a baby at 43 or whatever. Or the other one, like one of my clients, she told the story of like, I was fertile and the only time he had wanted to have sex was when I was fertile. Otherwise, he would become mean. And she said, while I had no problem, I wanted babies, I loved being pregnant. I would tell him, like, if we have sex tonight, we're going to get pregnant. And of course, he didn't care, which then, of course, they got pregnant. And then he resents her because they have so many babies. It doesn't matter the circumstances. It's all of this mindset of what do we think about what we are entitled to, how we love each other, like you said. Am I truly loving the other for the other's own sake? Am I withholding my love, my body, because of my own selfish, I'm too tired, I'm too touched out. And these are valid. Like I hear moms, like I've been breastfeeding this baby all day long. I don't want him to touch me, right? Or with mothers of small children, or I'm dealing with my near death. I don't want him to like this. Sex is the last thing on my head. There's all those things, and they're all challenges of do I sit here in the moment and dwell on my perspective, or do I heroically get up and say, you know what? God's calling me to love you in this way at this moment, but God's also calling us to love in a different way at a different moment. And that's one of those things that we don't talk about. It's like, is the abstaining, like, oh, I got to abstain. I'm like, yeah, I learned this acronym through a friend of mine, an instructor who teaches the Creighton model, SPICE, spiritual, physical, intellectual, creative, and emotional. When you're abstaining, because we get used to saying, I love you. If you have sex with me, I love you. You're telling me you love me if I have sex with you. But there are other ways to share our love. And to me, what brought out the beauty of abstaining was this opportunity like, okay, now we get to date again. That was when I heard about NFP. Again, I had a daughter. I wasn't virtuous. I didn't know how to live a holy life. I didn't know what a Catholic dating looked like. I was never told any of that. But I knew that if I have to abstain while I'm in marriage, then I have more authority and I'm in more integrity with my children when I tell them as teenagers don't have sex. Because guess what? Your dad and I aren't having sex during certain periods either. And I also realized that if you use that time for abstinence towards those other areas in your life, then the whole marriage can benefit because it's not just having sex and having babies. It's growing together spiritually. It's growing together creatively. And I'm going to just kind of share like one of the thoughts that I had. And this is a really horrible thought. And I had to take it to confession because there were many times where my husband just gets worn out in the world and he just like shuts down when he comes home. And so then he would want to, he just, I think this is the normal male thing, but I didn't understand it, right? So he wouldn't really like talk to me, like there was no connection, but then he wanted to have connection in the bedroom. And
Mhm.
I hate to say this, but one of my thoughts was like, I just feel like a prostitute. That's what I felt like. And I had to deal with that with the Lord. I never, my husband never listened to this podcast. I'm sorry, sweetheart. That is what I thought. But thanks be to God, I took it to the Lord. And I'm going to tell you, I remember, and there's always the struggle, like, do I say yes? Do I say no? And this is a common thing. This is why we're having this conversation. I remember one night, I get to the bathroom, and the Lord said to me, Jane, you were postmenopausal and your husband still desires you. You better get in that bed and go enjoy him. And I thought, you know what, Lord, you're right. Oh my goodness, I am so sorry, Lord. Like that thought totally changed it because, like, yeah, I didn't have libido. I wasn't frisky. I didn't, the whole 9 yards of intimate. Like there was nothing. There's nothing. Like what is when you're
Flatline?
flatlined? You're flatlined, right?
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And
Okay.
yet,
Careful. I'm sitting next to you.
and yet, that's not the
Forward.
case.
I
But
know.
that's not the case. I willingly chose
Mhm.
to go into that bed. And it's just been like our youngest son is a freshman in college. And so we're kind of been still in this transition of empty nesting. And it's been almost freaky about how fun and enamorous. And it's like, wow, the Lord is really making up just because of our own situation with being in the military and being gone so much. Like I see it, like we're having date nights. My husband has this whole Grand Canyon experience for our anniversary planned. It's just, and I'm just sitting here like, who in the heck is he? But I really believe that part of it is because of the coaching. I've learned how to get my mind and recognize when it's me. I always say the computer, like, right? In my thoughts and in my words and what I've done and what I failed to do, me, and then allow him to be him and that freedom, total freedom to love. If someone had told me that this is where we would be after all the struggles that we've had, understanding, and, NFP is hard. I do tell people NFP is the narrow gate. NFP is the narrow gate. But the Lord told us, if you want to be my disciple, you need to pick up that cross and you need to follow me. And sometimes the cross is the one you married. It's just the way it is, right? But there's always a resurrection. That's the thing, is that's Catholics. We focus on 6 weeks of the passion and death, but we have 50 days of resurrection. I didn't mean to get on a bandwagon. I know we've gone really over. This has been really good. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to share with you, please, if this has been a good episode for you, first of all, please pass it to anyone and everyone that you know. But more importantly, Jeremy and I are really excited. We are going to co-host a workshop later in this month, July 16th, online. It's free for men. So if you're in the case of where Jeremy was, of being a young 25-year-old or whatever, and you're not dating, if you're a man and you want to know a little bit more about this, please come to this workshop. I'm going to be explaining the NFP part, but then Jeremy is going to take that over and you guys can ask him all the questions that men need to talk to men, right? And you've done it because this is your forte. This is your wheelhouse. This is why I love partnering with you, because I can only do so much and you get to do the other stuff. And Cindy, it's just been such a joy to finally meet you, to hear your story, to hear your courage. I know you and I are going to partner somehow, some way together as well soon. Do you have any closing remarks?
I think I would say, first of all, we're honored that you had us because it has been fun. I would just say, as difficult as it sometimes can be, in all of it, we're just called to love. And even though there's wounds, there's struggles, there's all the difficult things, God can redeem that. But we have to be patient as well. And in the struggle, it's hard. It's really hard to be patient and wait on the Lord in that difficulty. I didn't know, I mean, until we became coaches, like I wish I would have known about coaching like about 20 years ago.
Yeah, right. I know. Not
when
near
all
where
of
were you?
our craziness really started, to help us get through some of that, because it's been really helpful in what we've learned just in the last few years of how to really process through the emotions and the circumstances and realize how much we can control how we show up. Our default is to just hang on to the anger and the frustration and the resentment. For everyone who's listening to you, I'm sure that they're well aware of the benefits that coaching can have. And so for anyone who's struggling and battling through that, trying to figure out how to get through those difficult times, I mean, just don't be afraid to reach out to a coach somewhere to help you process through some of that, because God will redeem and God will heal.
Amen. And real quickly, I just want to ask about your coaching, because I know Jeremy's got this freedom to love. I know you're kind of like starting, but I would love to recommend people to you. Who do you love to coach?
Yeah, so I've actually been working full time, and I just recently took a new position, and I'm working part time, ironically, with a marriage ministry nonprofit, which is I mean, God's just got a really funny sense of humor because that's where our passion fell. And so my goal is to get into being able to do some more coaching. I haven't proclaimed a niche, but it's funny how it just tends to be difficulties in relationships and marriages and all of the emotions that brings with it. So yeah, if anybody is interested, I'm happy if anyone reaches out to you or wants to get our information. I love being able to journey with people where our faith is concerned, because God has been so faithful to us in all of the difficulties. When the world tells us it's so easy to just end things, get a divorce, you're entitled, yeah, you deserve to be happy. And it's like, this road is not always easy. And when we're journeying it alone, it's easy just to go run and kind of hide under a rock, but that's not who we're called to be. And that's not who God created us to be.
Yeah.
And going it alone is not how we're supposed to do that either.
Right.
And so I love being able to journey with people and help them through some of that self-discovery, because something new happens.
Yes. And walking with the Lord.
Yeah, he transforms. If you'll let your mind be open to it, he'll transform all things.
Yeah.
But it just takes time.
Jeremy, closing notes, closing comments?
Yeah, my encouragement to guys would be to just remember you can do difficult things. God gave us the ability to step up and to do difficult, challenging things. And NFP is not easy. Chastity, virtue is not easy, but we can do difficult things. And we have the grace of the sacraments. We don't have to do it on our own. So join us July 16th.
Yes.
I look forward to having some time and answering questions, and appreciate Jane, you having us on.
No, thank you. I really appreciate you guys for your vulnerability. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Jeremy, for your ministry. I can see how the Lord is going to just collaborate. We're just going to do some stuff. So thank you, everyone that hung in here. This was a little bit longer than we anticipated, but I think it was good information. We'd love to hear your comments, your reviews. Again, share it with someone that you think really, really needs to hear this message. We're all here. Cindy, Jeremy, and I are just here to serve, and we want you to be in heaven with us, right?
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So, usually I have a scripture verse. This is Thessalonians 5:16. Rejoice always, pray without ceasing. In all circumstances, give thanks, for this is the will of God for you in Christ Jesus. Amen. Have a good week, everyone. God bless you.
Don't forget to have your favorite guy sign up for the free online Men and NFP workshop Jeremy and I will be co-hosting together July 16th. And depending on what your time zone is, depends on what time it is. Look forward to seeing you there.